Back at the hospital, Sunjin stayed by Woobin's side. They sat chatting and catching up as if they hadn't seen each other in ages. The doctor walked in and reminded Sunjin it was time for his checkup. Sunjin hesitated, but Woobin told him to go and that he wouldn't run away. He would still be there. Sunjin told him he'd be back soon and walked out with the doctor. Immediately after, the girl Woobin had once been set up with on a blind date walked in. She approached his bedside with a smile, saying it was good to finally see him back to life. Woobin said it was a strange coincidence for them to meet under such circumstances. She smiled and told him she worked at the hospital and that they were bound to see each other again. She said she would be his nurse from now on. Woobin smiled and said it was good news. Looking at her name tag, he realized he had never asked her name and was unaware it was Tiana. She smiled and said it was okay. Yuna arrived and stood by the door, watching them as they chatted and smiled at each other. Woobin told Tiana he hadn't forgotten about the dinner he had promised her and that he would take her out once he got discharged. She smiled and said it was good he hadn't forgotten and that she hoped he recovered soon and got back to his normal life. Yuna, standing there, decided not to enter the room. She sat alone at the hospital park, thinking maybe Woobin was really with Tiana. She remembered seeing them being intimate at the dance studio, and now Tiana was the first person by his side when he woke up. They were even flirting. Minsu came along and spotted Yuna sitting alone. She walked up to her and asked if she was okay, saying she had hoped to see her happy since Woobin was out of his coma, but she looked rather sad. Yuna told Minsu she felt stupid. Minsu, confused, asked why she would think that. Yuna stood up and said she thought Woobin was with someone else and that she had seen him flirting with Tiana. She added that she was surprised he even had the energy to flirt after waking up from a coma. Minsu laughed, finding Yuna's jealousy endearing. She reminded her that if Woobin was with someone else, he wouldn't have written her a letter confessing his feelings and saying he wanted to be with her. She told her to be happy that he made it and not to worry. His heart was with her, not anyone else. Yuna said maybe she was right, and that she might have overreacted. Minsu smiled and suggested they go in together to see him. Yuna said Minsu should go first. She needed a moment to cool down. Minsu agreed and reminded her not to be upset, but to be happy instead. With that, she walked away, leaving Yuna alone with her thoughts, realizing she may have overreacted. Minsu walked into Woobin's hospital room. He stared at her as she walked in carrying a fruit basket, happy to see her smile again. She stood by his bedside and said she was happy to see him with his eyes open and that he looked much better. Woobin smiled and just stared at her, happy to see her. Minsu sat in the chair beside him and asked how he was feeling. Snapping out of his thoughts, Woobin said he was feeling much better. Minsu smiled and told him to name one thing he wanted to eat when he got out of the hospital, and she would bring it to him. Woobin jokingly said he didn't think she could bring him what he wanted to eat. Minsu laughed, happy to hear him joking again. Woobin then said he wanted a freshly baked carrot cake. Minsu said she would bring it to him. She thanked him for saving her life and said even a carrot cake couldn't repay what he had done for her. Woobin said it was his duty as a friend to protect her, and even if he had died, he would have died happy knowing he protected someone he cared about. Minsu was touched by his words. She took his hand, and his heart felt warm just lying there and looking at her. Yuna walked in and stood by his bedside, looking at him without saying a word.